Green Architecture students, welcome back. We're going to get into the teaching about how to use an architect's scale. And basically to do that, I'm going to walk you through a PowerPoint, giving you some commentary along the way. Pay close attention to this because that architect's scale that we made already, or you should have made already, is what we'll be using as we go through this activity. So, first part, we're going to talk a little bit about what is scale. Scale is at the dimensions where we're defining the size and the location of a feature. Oftentimes in the architectural world, we have a scale drawing, and basically that's a drawing that shows the real object with accurate sizes, except they've all been reduced down or enlarged by a certain amount, and it's called the scale. Think of a house, for example. Houses are big. They would never fit onto a piece of paper. But if we scale that down, take something really big and we shrink it down to a scale size, now we can show a good representation of that house on a piece of paper. Okay? Then sliding down, I'll move myself up a little bit here. The architect's scale is a specialized ruler that we use when we're drafting, we're designing, we're measuring architectural drawings to the appropriate scale. So, let's see if I can get my PowerPoint to work here. Our first step, we want to read the scale. Looks like I need to keep moving myself around here so I'm not in your line of vision. We read the scale of the blueprint or the drawing. Typically, you'll find this on a title block. So down in this area, we might have the scale. In this case, it says 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. We have to pay special attention to that as we go along. All right, let's see if we can get this to work again. Step 2, we need to rotate the architect's scale and look for the side label with the drawing scale. So if you take your scale that you've made already, and if you look at that, on the end, get this a little closer, you can see that little piece that says 1/4 of an inch, okay? Much like you see on the video here. Okay, rotate that scale. We can find the one that ties into the drawing we're working on. The labels indicate the number of inches per foot for that scale. So the side labeled 1/4 is the scale 1/4 of an inch. 1/4 inch is equal to a foot. All right, let's move on. Step 3. We want to line up the 0. And if you look at your scale, you might want to keep this handy as we're working along. You look at your scale, and you can see that there is a 0 at the end there with the little inch marks, okay? Find the 0, we line up that with the left end what we're going to draw. Here's the 0, and then we're going to start counting this way. We're going to use that 1/4 inch scale, all right? Step 4, read the scale marking that is closest to the right end of the line, but not beyond the line, to determine the length of the line in feet. So we've put our 0 right here. We're measuring over to this line right here, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. If you look right between, here's 1, 2, 3. They don't show the numbers. They're saving space. So we're 10 feet. That's our whole feet, okay? Next one, we're going to slide the scale so that the scale marking that was just beyond the right end of this line now lines up with it. So remember that 10 we had right here? That was over here before. We slid that down. So we know we're 10 feet. Next step, we're going to figure out the inches. We need to then look at this inch portion right here. Count the number of shorter marks between the 0 mark and the far mark on the scale to determine how many inches each mark represents. These lines divide one scale increments into fractions of a foot. And since there are 12, if you were to count each of these little lines, if you look at your 1/4 inch scale, there are 12 little lines there. Well, we already know that there's 12 inches in a foot, right? So you can read these smaller increments as if they are inches. There are 12 of them. So we're going to move on here. Each mark represents 1 inch if there are 12 marks. Look at our example here. 0, there is 12. We count these. Halfway between there is 6. Halfway between that is 3, 2, 1. That gives us right down to the inch. But if we represent 2 inches, If it represents 2 inches if there are only 6 marks. So if we have an 1/8 inch scale, look how many marks we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now each little mark here represents 2 inches. Okay? 1/4 inch scale, there's 12 markings. 1/8 inch scale, there are only 6 markings. So each mark represents 2 inches. All right, if there are 24 marks, each of those little marks represents a 1/2 inch. Here's our 3/4 inch scale. If we were to count all of those, we can use the technique they used in the video. Well, we know halfway between 0 and an inch or a foot is 6, and half of that is 3. Well, we'll go from 3, and we just kind of keep moving on. 2, 1. Uh-oh, we got another one in there. That means that each one represents a 1/2 inch. What if there were 48 marks? What does that represent? Well, a lot smaller, right? We're not going to get that defined in our class. We're probably only going to go as small as a 3/4 inch scale. If you were to do the math, though, twice as many marks on this scale as there are here, that means each mark is a 1/4 inch. All right, moving on. Step 7, count the number of marks between the 0 marking and the left end of the line that you are measuring. Multiply that number by the number of inches on each mark. So we had our 10 lined up here. We slide back here, and from 0, now we start counting the other way. Not sure we can zoom in far enough here, but if we were to count those marks, it's probably 1, 2, it's either 2 or 3 inches. Okay, so marking that, they're going to call it 4 inches in this case. I suppose we could kind of call it 4 inches for that little mark there. Hard to see in the PowerPoint. But if we combine the feet measurement and the inch measurement to get the total length of the line, example that you measured is 10 feet and 4 inches. Total length in architectural notation, remember that, is 10 feet hyphen 4 inches, pronounced 10 feet 4 inches. All right, that pretty much sums up measuring with an architect's scale. I will take the next video to explain to you how we're going to apply that to your activity.